rising and falling away. So I think sometimes there's some misunderstanding, like you thought there's just can only be one group, but it's clear now, is that right? And Jan, one other point from last week, which I think you wish to clear up, because Kun Warasak sent me a note, and I think maybe there was a slip of the tongue, but I thought that when we were talking about the Magga factors, the path factors, I think that you did say there are either 5 or 6 if one of the Virati Chaitasikas arises, never 7, and at enlightenment 8 path factors arise together. And
we just talk about usual plain like 89 citta, but there can be 7 too. When Magga citta arises with jhana, the second jhana, no vitaka. That's why only 7 are there. That we don't talk about it at that point last time, but when we talk about how many makas in a citta, usually when it's really when it's lokiya maka 5, but when it is lokutra 8, 3 of the virati cetasikas arise together. But when it arises with jhana, the 5 jhana, lokutra, maka, and phala, and at that moment when it is accompanied by the jhana, the second jhana, vitaka does not arise. So there are 7.
7, yes. In this case, 7, yes. I don't think it was any mistake last time, because we were just talking about usual cases. But as you say, when it in the case of when the Magajitas have been conditioned by jhana, then only 7 factors if it is second jhana upwards. Yes. And there was another point he mentioned that you wished to clarify, but his note wasn't clear. He said, however, 6 is not for Satipatthana. Would you like to elaborate on that point?
Because you see that when it's Magga Paccaya, virati, 3 viratis are included, but they cannot arise all 3 together. That's why we talk about Magga Paccaya in daily life. Any time of kusala with one of virati, then it is more than 5, right? But it's not lokiya. But when,
yes.
Excuse me, it's not lokutra yet. So it can arise with any citta with Magga Paccaya. But when it's lokutra moment, the 3 viratis cetasika arise together. That's all.
Yes. I think that is clear, but his note said that when there is 6, so that means 5 plus 1 virati, it's not for Satipatthana. So we're not talking about lokutra, but for example, at moments of right understanding, when the 5 factors arising, and 6 if there is 1 virati. And the comment he said that you mentioned was not for Satipatthana.
Mm-hmm.
What were you meaning by this?
That's why we talk about Magga Paccaya and Eightfold Path Magga. See?
Right. Okay. Differentiating between Magga Paccaya and Magga factors. Yes. And path factors. Because Magga Paccaya is broader path condition.
That's why it doesn't mention, it mentioned only 5 and 8. When it's the development of Satipatthana.
And also, as I mentioned briefly last time, because at moment of abstaining, well, we know that the cheetahs follow very rapidly, so there can be moment of abstaining with virity and then moment of understanding reality. But actually the cheetahs follow very quickly, so can be different moments. Alan isn't here yet. If he arrives, we may come back to it because it was his topic. And one comment you made was when no virities, you said when no sila at those moments, but we know in the deepest sense that any moment of kusala chitta is sila, it is the way of behavior. But in this context, sila is just referring to the virity cetasikas, but even the kusala chittas without the virity are also kusala sila. So if we say no sila, we have to know that it's just referring to the virities. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Nina. Do you have anything you would like to bring up, Nina? We can't hear you, Nina. Can't hear you. Okay, you can start talking, Nina. I think you've unmuted. Try again.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And last time Ajahn spoke about knowing the difference between Satipatthana and no Satipatthana. And then she explained it's not possible to know this if we don't know the nature of chitta and cetasika and rupa. And I found that a very good point. So it's very useful if Ajahn can elaborate more on it.
I think that to understand reality as whether it is that which arises and experience the object, it can lead to understand the nature of that as not self, with no word at all at that very moment. But there can be moments of thinking about it, and thinking at that moment is real. So whatever is there can be the object of satipatthana without any word. For example, anger is there. It has its own function, its characteristic. No need to say that it's a nama. It experiences the object that it dislikes and so on. See, it just to understand the nature of that which appears as it is, that which cannot experience, no name for it, whether it is such and such subtle vayotatu or whatever is there. That characteristic is as it is. It's just hard, or it is just soft, or it is just touch, and so on. That's all. Learn to understand the truth from hearing, considering that it just points to whatever is there right now. For example, even how many times we talk about nama in Rupa, but the characteristic of a nama or a rupa, does it appear to be known or not? But when it's known, like hardness now, what is there? It's hard. but the reality which experiences it doesn't show up, but it's there. That's why just learn to understand the difference between the reality which experiences the object and the reality which cannot experience the object. And from hearing and considering on and on, it develops so gradually, no expectation how much is there. Understanding this point or other point, this characteristic of Nama or that characteristic of Rupa, just learn to not think about other thing, but beginning to attend to the characteristic of what is there as we are talking about. This is the point. So the way to get rid of the wrong understanding is so very, very slowly, very, very gradually. So how can we know each moment of understanding just a little bit of what is there as it experiences? Because usually no time to think about it because it's gone. The sound is there, but that which hears it is not there when sound is there, and they are gone. That's why just have such words to be heard, to be considered carefully. Little by little, it's the way it is. That's why just understanding that what is there now is to be known. Otherwise, nothing can be known at all. Just heard and thought about, considered as it is, one by one. But what moment is moment of just understanding what is there in life, seeing, touching, liking, salty, or whatever is there as it is. They're all in life. They arises and falls away, passing on and on and on and on and on without any thought about it. So at moment of hearing, it's time to enroot the interest of the truth by conditions. That's all by conditions. That's why learning to understand the very subtle Makkah, the Eightfold Path, it is not any moment with attachment or desire or wishing to understand this and that, but it's that now we are talking about the very, very subtle truth of what is there now that can be known gradually, that it's there and it can be known right now. We have talked about the reality which experiences so many, many times. Is it enough to begin to attend to the characteristic of that which she is now, little by little, gradually, without any expectation? When will it be clear? Impossible. Only time comes ready to understand it a little clearer with a little more understanding. And it depends because at that moment there is sati as well. But sati at that level is not directly on what is there now at all. But when it's there, little by little, closer and closer to understand what is there. When it's ready, when it's time, when it is conditioned, it arises. That's all. Just live with confidence of the truth that is there in life. It cannot be known if we don't talk about it, if we don't discuss about it, if we don't read about it, and so on. That's why the discussion is the moment of thinking, considering what is there. Otherwise, other time, no thought about it at all. For example, right now, seeing, and it sees. So it's time just to attend by attention, not by anyone at all. This is the most subtle moment to develop understanding gradually, little by little. It attends by itself, by a reality which performs that function. And we learn to understand the moment with what kind of realities are there appearing from moment to moment. A little more, a little more. by days or by months or by years. That's the way it is. So just discuss about it to understand it as different realities. That is so very subtle. For example, pasta, see, who knows? But it's there. So we learn to understand that each moment has to be conditioned by many, many conditions. And this is the way to have the firm confidence, even intellectually, to condition suddenly anatthaness is there. By anatta, it's there. Attend to the characteristic or be aware or develop understanding of what is there now. See, little by little. So very little. But that is the way it is. No one understanding. And understanding the nature of anatta is the only way to realize the truth, not by other way at all. So now, just is there to be known by conditions, little by little. That's the way the Eightfold Path or the Five Paths now develop. Fivefold Path. So it needs intellectual understanding to condition moment of direct understanding by anatta. It has to be understanding more and more about anatthaness. That's all. Because whatever is there, no matter what, is anatta. That is the way to let go the idea of self by moments to moments, understanding little by little. Right now. So in life, the understanding of letting go is not by anyone, but by understanding little by little. So who knows when will it arises and experience the object as it is? Moment of no one and nothing at all. Only that reality which now appears is there so clear. Now it's not clear yet. But when there is more direct understanding of it, little by little, it attends to just one characteristic of a reality, a little more naturally, secretly. Because now there is sati, but not level of direct awareness of a characteristic which appears now through different doorways, eyes, ears, mind, body. So natural that it takes quite a long, long time, patiently, not to do anything, but time to consider, time to attend by itself, by all dhammas, the mental factors, the cetasikas, condition. It does not appear so clear suddenly because it's on the way to develop it, on the way of developing understanding little by little to be firm. And when it appears anatta, unexpected, anytime by conditions, that's why it let go the idea to try so much or to think about it in order to have it arise and so on. That's the hinder of the progress of understanding the truth. the more understanding, the more subtle it is. The path is so very subtle. Only understanding of no one, no thing, no self can condition a little more attention to the characteristic by conditions unexpectedly all the time. In truth, it's the way it is each moment in life, but it's not known, it's not thought about. That even right now, it's just the way it is until right understanding becomes a little clearer to know the characteristic first of that which is now appearing. Otherwise, how can it be clearly known as it is if there's no attention, no awareness, no understanding of what is there now too? If it's not now, it's not understanding of the truth, it's just thinking about it. But it's there. The test of the development of understanding, how much, or it's not yet clear. Because so many things together appearing, it seems like all at once, but in truth, just one at a time, because citta arises and experience only one object at a time. And it begins to be a little clearer when there is attention by conditions to whatever is there, known as there is awareness with right understanding, even just so very little, but it's the right path of anatta. Understanding the path is the first round of the Ariya Satya too. That is so very subtle. So we read about the Eightfold Path one by one. But what is there now? Not yet appearing. Sammatiti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. They're all in waves until it's there by conditions only. And condition is letting go. What is there seems to be together. Because just only one can be known, even by nimitta, seeing right now, that which is seen right now, hearing right now, sound right now, thinking right now, attachment right now, whatever is there will appear to be known when there's more understanding, little by little, about as long as they are together, it cannot be clear understanding of anyone yet. That's why Buddha taught for 45 years to understand conditions for each moment. So it's so very natural, daily moments by conditions. And when there's a little more understanding, it can be one object appearing to be known. Even it's not clear, but it begins to understand the difference between what and what. Parami, how much patience and virya and satya and firm understanding of not anyone can do, no one can do. Only realities arising and following. which can be known in daily life as someone and something, but learn to understand what are taken as I in a day. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Be patient and try to know these are moments of the development of understanding, only at moment of understanding. Doubt is there of everything as long as it's not clearly appears yet.
Ajahn, last week on that point about doubt, you were mentioning that even when it's vipassana jnana, doubt still arises because it hasn't been completely eradicated. And as you just mentioned, when the object does not appear clearly, then there is bound to be doubt. What about for the Chula Sotapanna, when there is the clear understanding of the conditioned nature of realities? I remember reading once before about how no more doubt at that point, but we know it's only completely eradicated by the Sotapanna.
What about the Vicikiccha? Is it anosmia?
Yes, and not eradicated until the stage of Sotapanna. So the
For
tendency
example,
has to be there.
For example, anyone who hasn't heard about the teachings at all, doubt whether there's no one, is it possible? Because I see, I hear, I think all the time. So what is meant by no one? Until they learn to understand the truth of each reality. So even the intellectual understanding, there can still be doubt about the truth, the nature of it. How can it appear just one at a time? Without understanding what sati is, it's not that which sees. It is a reality which caused the akusala not to arise from arising. See, who knows in a day? Sometimes it is kusala and sometimes it is akusala. But what conditions such moment? Kusala moment and akusala moment. So we learn to understand that in truth there's no one, but there is a reality. So we learn about the characteristic of each reality to understand it intellectually until moment of satipatthana. What is there cannot be object of satipatthana because when there's no understanding at all, it's not satipatthana to directly understand the truth. That is that which is there. Clear? Not yet. Doubt? See, all the time about different stages of even vipassana jnana. How deep, how thick the accumulation of ignorance and attachment is there in life, years and years and years on and on, even today, yesterday, and tomorrow. See, is there doubt now? See, depending on understanding. For the one who study carefully, they learn to know the difference. But even now, what is there is just only once in samsara. And what is there is not known clearly yet, but it's there. So understanding has to understand only that which appears as the object. Otherwise, there cannot be any understanding of what we are talking about, even hearing or sound or thinking or sanya and so on. That's why this understanding developed gradually to be firm, to understand anatta, because the truth is anatta. Not, but no matter what is it, it's anatta. So learn to understand the way one wakes up until one falls asleep. Anatta, on and on and on, unknown, until it's known as this or that, which is not anyone or anything. But as long as it does not appear a little clear stage by stage, doubt is there about the reality which sees. Even now it sees. But when it appears, it has to be only one reality, not other thing at all together. Doubt about that moment. How can it be? And what can it be? See, until it's there. But even it's there so very quickly, just like ordinary life, this moment, as quickly as that. So the understanding of that moment is not as clear as the higher understanding. Develop on and on, patiently, not to be I, but understanding a little more and let go the idea of self. Anatta, all the way to understand the truth. It's not I or anyone or anything. It is as it is. Only once in samsara, what is there? Sooner or later, it changes from being this person to other person, on and on and on, from one to one. Only reality is conditioned to arise non-stop as long as there are conditions for whatever arises. Doubt is there too. For example, those who just learn to know what is what, doubt about satipatthana, how different it is from intellectual understanding and that which directly aware of a reality, and how much understanding from the very beginning. So little, not as when one understand more and more and more, and understand that it's not as clear as it should be as vipassana. Only one is there. But that is not only one because it arises and falls away so rapidly. But the way to attain to the very moment, understanding the different level of sati. But panya, see, comparing sati and panya from intellectual understanding to understand the truth. The characteristic of a reality is there. And how can it be known? So very little at a time. But there can be the understanding of the differences between sati and satipatthana and satindriya, firm enough or not yet. Doubt is there all the way, but depends on whether it arises to be there or not. For example, right now, does it arise? Or sometimes it arises by conditions, and that has to be known through a reality, not I or anyone. And everything in life has to be known according to, we have heard a lot, we understood the way it is from hearing, considering, on and on. But when it's there, different from idea. This is the way to understand the subtlety of Dhammas as anatta. That's right. So anatta now. It's not I who hear, but there must be the understanding of the truth of that which now experiences an object. Just be the chief of experiencing. It sees different from attachment or aversion. They are all there, arising and following one by one. Learn to understand it as no one. Why not? Seeing arises and falls away by conditions. Sometimes it sees the pleasant object and sometimes unpleasant. So it's not just a word, but when it develops, it's there. When it experiences unpleasant object, there can be right understanding of it at moment of experiencing pleasant object. Or when the object is unpleasant, it's there, understanding. It experienced the pleasant object, different from unpleasant object. That's all in life, to be known little by little the truth of what is there from time to time, depending on conditions, whether it is the object of awareness and right understanding or not yet. So no matter how much we heard about the reality which arises is the chief of experiencing, just be the foundation or the basic to understand it when it's there. Because it doesn't have any color, sound, or taste, or smell at all. Imagine when it's there. Nothing appear at all. That's why we begin to attend or to understand the moment before seeing, the moment before hearing. It's there. The first round of the Four Noble Truths, Ariya Satya, to condition the second round, to condition the third round.
Robert, I don't know if you're able to participate. I saw you briefly at the start, but I was wondering, Ajahn was just mentioning about the Arya Satya. I was wondering if you would like to bring up the topic you were writing about on the list about dukkha and the end of dukkha. Perhaps he's not there.
Hi.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Robert. Yes.
Good.
Did you hear me?
You were talking to me about that, right? About the dukkha and the end of dukkha, and I brought
Right.
up Bhikkhu Bodhi's comment that he used to think the Buddha's teaching was all about dukkha and the end of dukkha, but now he thinks it's more. It's wider than that, like simple basic teachings of doing good and karma and so forth also factor in, that are additional to just the deeper teachings on dukkha and the end of dukkha. By the way, we're in a van in Sri Lanka at the moment with all the family. So if it's a bit hard to hear me, that's because we're driving along.
We're hearing you very well. I hope you're not driving it.
No, we've got a driver. Yeah, we're
yeah. So
on
I
the way
think
to
it came,
Candy.
and it came down to a expression about whether the teachings come back to teaching a teach only dukkha and the end of dukkha, or whether it's just dukkha and the end of dukkha, but many other topics as well. So I think this was the point of your
Yeah,
the
Venerable
discussion.
Bodhi seems to think there's preliminary teachings, and he's that before the Buddha gets to the deep teachings, and that's where the debate is. Whereas the commentaries say even everything is about the Buddha's teaching dukkha and the end of dukkha. So if anyone, if Ajahn got an opinion on that, be good to know.
What about what is dukkha? Not only dukkha, but what is dukkha? What is it? Is it real?
Right.
So what is dukkha?
So I suppose dukkha in the dukkha ariya satya is everything except tanha and nibbana, I guess. So all realities.
If nothing arises at all, can it fall away? If nothing arises, nothing fall away. Is that right?
Right.
So the way it is, just arise and falls away, non-stop, no one, just by condition, and then gone, never to return. Is that sukha or dukkha?
Well, that is dukkha for sure.
That's the Ariya Satya. Whatever arises falls away instantly.
And I think the point is people often translate dukkha as suffering and so on, and they have their ideas of what it is. But if there's no understanding of what is Dhamma, what are Dhammas, and how Dhammas are conditioned to arise and fall away, then there can't really be any understanding of what is dukkha, because there is just the thinking about conventional situations and the impermanence in a general sense. So it's only when there is the understanding of different realities as anatta that there can be the understanding of the arising and falling away of them and why each one is dukkha. So I think this is also why there are lots of misunderstandings. And as you mentioned, Robert, people can always point to different suttas that seem to be about different topics, like about giving or helping one's parents or living easily with one's family and so on. But actually, they're all about different dhammas arising and falling away. Kusala dhammas, akusala dhammas.
Right. When you look at it that way,
Kirya.
even the Sigalavada Sutta is really, when you break it down, it's all about dharmas anyway, even though the Buddha's using panyati to explain things, it's still, when you look at them and break it down, there's only dharmas. So it must be dukkha and the end of dukkha.
I agree. So that's why without the understanding of dhammas, it will just be read like another story, which could be a Christian story or a Hindu story or any story about people and things and people doing good deeds. But we're talking about the Buddha's teachings, so whatever we read are about dhammas, dhammas which are anatta, dhammas which are dukkha.
Right. Thank you.
Wish you a good trip in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, we went to a few places. We just as an aside, my classical Theravada.org forum, it's there's two of us that own it. It's a bhikkhu Subhuti, American bhikkhu, who's been ordained for over 20 years, and myself. And I went to his temple where he's one of the senior monks, and they teach Abhidharma a lot. You know, I listened in on an Abhidharma teaching with a Sri Lankan monk teaching about kalapas. It was very good, actually. So, and they've got 80. It's only been going for 2 years, and already 80 young bhikkhus there from all over the world, all very keen on Abhidharma. But so a little bit encouraging that there's still places around that are interested in Abhidharma and focus a bit on Anatta at least. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that up.
Here, whereabouts is it in Sri Lanka?
Listen to Ajahn Sujin every day, but yeah, it's good that they're getting the theory of Abhidharma.
Whereabouts in Sri Lanka is it, the temple?
Oh gosh, I really don't know. It's about 3 hours drive from Anuradhapura. It's way out in the country. Yeah, some rich donor came and donated it because of several quite well-known Abhidharma monks, and yeah, it's attracting a lot of people, a lot of new monks. So there is still, there's still a possibility of at least learning the theory of Abhidharma around the world.
And I hope they can appreciate that it's not just the theory or the book study and knowledge, but it's about this moment, the seeing now, the hearing, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling that is appearing here and now.
Yeah, well, I certainly emphasize that on classicaltheravada.org. And yeah, so I mean, no one disagrees with it. How much it's understood is another matter, of course, as with everything. Yeah. But,
Anyway, thank you for telling us.
so Ajahn Sujin, is what do you think of learning the theory of Abhidharma like these bhikkhus are learning? Any comments on that?
We have to understand truthfully the point of studying Dhamma, because there's no understanding at all if there's nothing heard from the enlightened one. The noble truth, the ultimate truth. See why it's like that? Even just the word dukkha. Is it easy to realize the nature, which is dukkha? The nature of dukkha, the arising and falling way. Now, nothing arises and falls away, but the truth is that what is there has to arise as soon as it has condition. It's conditioned to arise. It falls away because it has arisen instantly. Just understanding, consider what is true and why it is such a, it cannot be changed at all. As soon as whatever arises, it falls away instantly by conditions for arising only. As soon as it has risen, then no condition to stay, fall away instantly. Is the truth? Learn to understand the truth, to have confidence of the truth, to be true to the truth. And that's the way to understand what is the truth of life. For those who have no attention in interest in understanding this, they don't mind at all, just live. And then they know that they would die, but it doesn't matter. But the truth is that what condition life at moment of birth and on and on and on. Without conditions, can anything arise? And so on. Learn to understand the truth. For those who see the benefit of the precious reality, understanding, not just live with ignorance. That's all. And no expectation at all. The truth is the truth. It doesn't belong to anyone at all, the way it is. And when there is such understanding, we have the different aspect or idea about life or whatever is there now at all. See, not as those who do not understanding the truth, just think about this and that and try to do this and that. But the truth is that no one, no me, no anything. They are only different realities. This is the beginning to consider the truth. Is it dukkha? Just arise. Before arising, there's nothing. And as soon as reality arises, it falls away. Nothing again. So what is that useful? To just arise and then gone. No one, no thing. From head to toe, from what is seen and heard through different doorways. Just live. And who knows? The moment of death and birth, just 2 moments. No gap in between. Any time, seeing right now and hearing is so far away. And there are many chittas in between, unknown. So the moment of birth, death and birth is just like that. So what about just dream about everything and then forget everything? Not just this life. On and on and on and on, non-stop. Is it true? Just have understanding. That's all. No one can do anything, but understanding can understand the truth until the truth appears as it is, as no one and nothing at all. Stage by stage, let go, clinging to life, which is just a moment and then gone. Learn
Thank
to
you, Ajahn. Ajahn, yesterday, when I was talking to the bhikkhus there, one very young monk had read something I wrote on the forum about lack of free will, that everything is conditioned, every moment's conditioned, and there's no self. And he he kind of wondered how that can be. He feels that there must be a way for the monks or us to make effort that can bring up kusala, that can develop the path. So he feels that there must be some way to have a little bit of free will. How would you reply to that?
I think that we can discuss on the truth of each reality. For example, any word about the truth like life, what is it? They crave to have very pleasant life, very serene, no obstacles at all. But what is life is not known. Can there be such moment? Letting go.
Yes,
And
well,
also, Robert, sorry, you go ahead.
oh no, go ahead, John. I just said, well, this wish to have something, is that conditioned? And he said, yes. Is the intention conditioned? Yes. But then it was always, but surely there must be some way to induce the eightfold path. And that was where we ended up.
Well,
go
just
ahead,
a couple of quick comments. One is that I think when he talks about making an effort, he's thinking of effort in the conventional sense, not the effort that forms part of ekusala citta or citta with understanding. So that is not anything like the conventional idea of effort. It's just a mental factor that performs a function and has the name effort. The second point is that, to my understanding, the circuit breaker, if you like, that can be a condition for right effort is hearing the Dhamma, hearing the Buddha's description of the way things are, hearing about different kinds of kusala. And because one not going to be able to think one's way forward, as we know, it requires a lot of frequent reminders from others. And it is the association with the wise friend or friends that is, as I say, a bit like a circuit breaker that can condition the arising of different kinds of kusala, either at the time or subsequently upon further reflection. So it's not a matter of having to decide to make an effort. It happens by it happens by circumstances. One has to have developed a certain degree of understanding in the past, so that when one hears about the Dhamma and kusala in this lifetime, which is a result of past deeds, kusala kamma, the meaning is understood and appreciated. So again, just conditions.
Exactly, yes. Without the Buddha's teaching, no possibility of the path ever developing. But if the teachings are heard, again by conditions, then there is the possibility for understanding to grow. Right.
As Jan said earlier, without understanding the truth, there's always the trying to do this or that. There's always looking for a shortcut, a meditation, going here, studying the theory, looking for a way to develop the path instead of just letting the understanding develop to understand what appears at this moment. So that's why there has to be the understanding of what the point of studying the Dhamma is, because if one's just learning the theory, learning the details, because one thinks one should study the Abhidhamma, but it's not about the understanding of life at this very moment, such as when one thinks there should be an I that can condition a little more understanding or can make an effort, then one has lost the point. One's not understanding what Abhidhamma is.
Right.
Because Abhidhamma is about the reality now. It's not the detail in the book.
Right. And this young monk yesterday said, well, of course there's anatta, but still I could see he was trying to slip in just a little bit of a hint of atta there, because it's not really understood, as you say, in the moment. But there's really nothing, no one. It's just these elements arising.
Yeah, I think he's trying to find a role for conventional effort.
And also, Robert, good points have been made there by Sarah and Jonathan, Tana Jan. I think that what strikes me about that issue, and it is a seductive one in many ways, and it's a very understandable question and a good question to consider carefully. And without good friends, we're unable to do that. We will be trying to figure it out with the idea of, was what Jonathan's been alluding to, is wrong effort, and also the idea of a self who must somehow figure this out. And it does point to how important it is to consider the Dhamma carefully. And that young monk, and you just spoke then also, Robert, about anatta, because anatta precludes that idea of a self. And so when you consider the matter carefully, you can begin to see the contradictions innate in the idea of free will. Excuse me, free will is not free, never was, it's conditioned, and it's not easy one to understand. It's not easy at all. And I think Jonathan's just alluded to this idea of how important it is to hear the Dhamma often, to consider it carefully. And that understanding is not going to be, happen overnight. You're not going to say, oh, well, got it now. no, it doesn't happen that way. And it does point to the incredible subtlety of the Dhamma, that what may seem to be so is not necessarily so. So it's an ongoing task of panya, sati at that level, to consider carefully, and then the answer slowly dissolves itself and resolves itself over time. But without the development of understanding, you won't get to that point. So it's a bit of a catch-22 in a way, that you try to get to a point which you can't get to because you can't think it out.
Thank you, Sundara. Would you say that someone who keeps listening to Abhidharma, that will gradually condition right understanding to come about by the repetition of listening to different areas of Abhidharma again and again?
No, you kind of just asked Tanajan that question, and of course it won't. I mean, people can have, inverted commas, good intentions, which are not necessarily good, but involve a lot of attachment, and think they're studying the Dhamma, when in actual fact they're studying their version of it, which is very easy trap to fall into. So I don't know if I'd dismiss it entirely and say it's useless. I don't think I'd go that far, because any association with Dhamma can be a condition potentially for some areas of kusala, but they may be very rare and probably will remain unknown, certainly at the level of panya. So it's a difficult one, Robert, and but I would encourage that excuse me, I'm sorry. I would encourage that young bhikkhu to be telling him, I think you have to my brother sent me an email recently. He was very political, so I'm not going to go into it, but he was talking about dissembling. We have to be subtle and try to encourage people in the study of Dhamma and not be too patronizing to them, so that they are discouraged, because I think it is ultimately a very good question, and it's an important one to consider, but it can't be considered or understood unless there is some appreciation of Satipatthana, and of course there will be through that an ongoing appreciation of anatta, which obviously directly contradicts free will. So I don't know if I discourage the study of Abhidhamma. I certainly, when I think at the beginning, when I was in Thailand or Sri Lanka, I didn't understand anything really in retrospect, and it was only when I said to Tanajan once, and I've said this before, look, what you're saying, speaking to Tanajan, really goes against what I've heard in these different meditation centers, or Abhidhamma centers, if you like. And she just said, well, people can say anything, and it's really up to us to consider so carefully what we hear. Is it in accordance with truth, or are we just trying to make things fit a particular situation? And that won't lead to wisdom. So it's a difficult area, and Tanajan, I believe, would always encourage us to consider carefully, so very carefully, because in many ways the development of wisdom is at stake. Do we want to develop wisdom, or our version of it? Because our version of it will take us further and further away from it, further and further away, and that's unfortunate, but that's just the nature of conditions.
And Robert, I think a distinction has to be made between studying the Abhidhamma or any aspect of the Dhamma as part of a course, or because one is in a situation where classes are held, for example, and having an interest in the Dhamma and discussing aspects of the Dhamma, including Abhidhamma, of course, or one's own reading or reflection, that sort of thing. There's no comparison between the two, because the former, studying in the course is like a ritualistic approach. And it doesn't mean that more is going to sink in that way.
And I wonder, Robert, if you've ever, in your conversations with the group, talked about the meaning of Abhidhamma, whether the seeing is Abhidhamma, hearing is Abhidhamma, the Dhamma now is Abhidhamma, because ultimately that's the study of Abhidhamma. The study of Dhamma is the study of Abhidhamma.
Yeah, that's very good point, Sukin.
Yeah, I might have mentioned that. Yes, actually.
And that's why one has to come back to this moment. For example, for the monk who thinks there must be some other lurking self, even though he's read that all dharmas are anatta. But what about the seeing now? Can anyone make the seeing arise now? Can anyone decide what is seen at this very moment? Because the seeing is gone instantly, not in anyone's control. That's why it's dukkha. No one can make it last. No one can decide what it will see. No one can stop it arising at this very moment. So I think it's only by coming back to the reality at this moment that there can be any deeper understanding, or, as Sukin said, beginning of understanding of what is meant by Dhamma and Abhidhamma, the subtle reality now.
And I think what I take from you, Sukin, there is that it's difficult to appreciate the conditionality of everything. It really is. It's not an easy thing, and of course, that points to the fact that Dhamma is not easy to understand, but certainly well worth the effort.
But don't you think the whole Abhidhamma talks about anatta? When the more you delve into it, even if in the beginning there's a lot of wrong understanding and misunderstanding, the more someone studies Abhidhamma, the more they see it points to every moment is conditioned. Like seeing is conditioned, visible object is conditioned, intention is conditioned, effort is conditioned. They're just elements. So wouldn't it be likely that someone is developing more understanding of anatta, even if it's in a fairly superficial way, but they would get, if they keep learning about it, aren't they likely to start seeing more that there is just moments?
Again, I think you can answer that in different ways. The first way, of course, is that it can just be made, because that doesn't necessarily have to be pariyatti. It doesn't have to be. It can seem to be, but it doesn't have to be. So that's the first point. The next point that I would consider is that if you had somebody like Sariputta hearing the Dhamma, and he could hear those words, and he was able to put together, if he heard those words like many bhikkhus did in the Buddha's time, they had the prerequisite conditions to understand it at that deep level, even though they just heard perhaps a few words, which we would recognize as Abhidhamma. But I don't believe we have those kind of people about today, or certainly not there are many, if at all they exist, on Manusaloka today. So it's again a difficult area, because I'm averse to saying it's all useless. Don't worry, you're not going to get anything. I wouldn't go that far, because I don't think that is doing entirely justice to the situation. But I would remain skeptical as to the benefits that they may gain from it, unless there has been a deeper appreciation of conditionality, which is not something that you convey in so many words or in a short conversation. And Ajahn would always remind us, as Sarah and others, about the realities that are appearing now, whether that's seeing or hardness. Ajahn talked about Wayodhatu before, which is a reality that we can know about, and it's important to know about, but it's not always very apparent. So, and discussing those, because it's going to be different for different people, what Dhammas usually rupas, of course, and Ajahn is always talking about, that reality that's not known, that one is known as the silent, the reality which does the experiencing, which is a lot more subtle and a lot more hidden. And that's talked about in the Chitta Vagga and Dhammapada, but I don't think people these days are able to make those profound connections that the bhikkhus did in the Buddha's time.
And Robert, you have your example, Bhikkhu Bodhi, the author of Comprehensive Manual of Abhidhamma, who now thinks that Buddha taught more than dukkha and the end of dukkha.
Yeah, that's a bit of a special case. He's just looking at sutta like the Jatakas and Sigalovada Sutta, and I think he's just making a point. But maybe if we discussed it more with him, he would agree that, yes, I can see the point that there is even dukkha and conditions in the Jataka and the Sigalovada. So, it might be one of those ones that with a bit of discussion, he would concede the point.
Now, what I'm saying is that if it was 20 years ago, he would stick with his original conclusion that all the Buddha taught was dukkha and the end of dukkha. How come now he's changed? It's just that if there's no understanding, then it cannot just pop up, and if it's wrong understanding, it's bound to grow.
Right. Well, I mean, there's no guarantee of anything. Yeah, but I still would claim that someone who is sincerely looking into the Abhidhamma and the Patana and learning about the elements and ayatana and the khandhas and kalapas and so on should be, they're very sincere, should be developing some gradual understanding that there's just elements, there's just conditions.
Well, I think
at some level.
On that subject, Robert, we know there is certain, there's no need to speak to names, Burmese monks who are incredibly knowledgeable in Abhidhamma, and they still talk about meditation centers and doing meditation and whatever. So learnedness at that level is dubious, potentially. It doesn't have to necessarily enable the path to be developed. However,
that's absolutely true, Sundara. No, I'm not saying it's a guarantee. No,
no.
Obviously, because of deeply embedded self-view, that can still happen even with someone who does know the Abhidhamma at some sort of intellectual level. Sure.
Yeah, so it's a difficult path, and we have been, and I can only say that and appreciate. I know that Jonathan and Sarah talked recently about establishing the forum, the Dhamma study group, and I certainly appreciate it. So, much appreciation to you both for starting the ball rolling in that way. But we also can be just profoundly grateful to people like Tanajan, who keeps on reminding us so often and so regularly about the importance of considering and hearing the Dhamma. Because if we're not doing that from the right people, from that, as we know, those 4 factors of enlightenment, so Dhamma, the Sapurisa Sangsewo, the wise person, because that truly does mean somebody who appreciates and understands Dhamma and is able to share it. And we're able to consider that the Saddhamma Savanam, we're able to hear it, and the Yoniso Manasikara that can follow on from that careful consideration. And unless we're doing that, or unless we're fortunate enough, and that's going to depend again, on conditions, whether or not there have been the prerequisite conditions developed in past lives that will enable us to listen up and say, that sounds interesting. I want to understand more about that. And there will be a lot of even beginning, perhaps wrong practice, we may say, but we can begin to appreciate how vitally important it is to continually listen to the Dhamma and consider it. Because if that doesn't happen, then there won't be development. There won't be development. So there are a lot of factors that need to come into play to enable that understanding to grow.
I mean, talking about wrong practice, as soon as someone gets that grasp with Tanha and Lopa, that they think they can make real progress doing a special way, then they start to turn away from pariyati, from real pariyati, and go down on their own little path or whatever their teacher tells them. So then in a way they're ignoring the Abhidhamma. They're looking for something else, I guess.
Well, that's true. And we can see I totally agree with that. But I'm also feeling that, like I was, when I think of myself earlier on in picture, in Thailand and in Sri Lanka to some extent, that it's easy for people to seem like they have understanding. And if someone's, inverted commas, very learned and they might be at a certain level, it's easy for us to become seduced by that, or thinking that they know better, when they talk about different practices. But we know now that that's not helpful, even though I was going to say that person means well. The one who's purporting to understand the Dhamma and wants to pass it on to the young bhikkhus or samaneras, but he's ill-equipped to do it. And that's really unfortunate. And the Buddha spoke about these people, in his time, that just because someone has been ordained 10, 20 or 30 years, you should always, very famous sutta, and it was mentioned in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, we should always consider very carefully, just because they're a Mahatera, there is no reason to believe what they say, and we can be, and we're seduced in many ways, potentially, at our peril. So it behoves us to really pay ever so much attention to what we hear, so that the correct path can be developed. But that's going to depend on conditions. It's all conditions. So there's a lot of traps that people can fall into along the way of development.
Okay, it's a good discussion. We've just got 5 minutes left, so let's see if Jan has some comments she would like to add at the end now.
I think that any question can be clear, but it has to be understanding from the very beginning of what we are saying. Otherwise, it's one's own idea, which is different from the others. So when we talk about just one word, Dhamma, see, does everyone understand it? Dhamma, they take it for some aspects only, Kusala Dhamma or whatever in the language. But what is it? We are talking about it. So what is it? See, if there's no understanding of Dhamma, can there be the understanding of what's meant by Abhidhamma? See, and even the word, the meaning of it is there. But understanding, it's much better than just remember the word and the meaning. So what is Abhidhamma right now? So we can talk about it, the truth of it. For example, dukkha, see, we talk about dukkha, but we don't know what is real dukkha. We think that painful feeling is dukkha. It's true, but it's just one aspect of that which arises to be painful. So in truth, what is more deep and more subtle about the truth of dukkha? If nothing arises at all, can there be the moment of painful feeling? And not just only painful feeling, what is there in life? It's there by conditions. No one can make it arise. Consider the truth to understand the truth of Dhamma, that even it's so deep as it is, it's not just can be understood by hearing only, but to understand that it's there. So real, it has a reason, and it sees now, and then it's gone. No one experiences the arising and falling away, but begin to think carefully. Is it true? Is it Dhamma? Is it no one? And what is meant by Dhamma? Dhamma has to be Dhamma. It cannot be other thing at all. That's why we learn to understand what we are talking about. No label as Theravada or what and what. But what is Theravada? The one who has firm, confident understanding of the truth, never change. But without understanding the truth, can we just take the word Theravada for such and such meaning? But the truth of it is Thera, so firm, confidence of the truth. So now we are talking about the truth. Whatever is there can be known. If there is the understanding, no doubt about what is life, is there life now, and what is life at this moment, and why is life? To begin to understand the word we use from birth to death, but without any understanding of the nature of the truth of what is there we are talking about. For example, birth, what is it? Death, what is it? See, it's real, it's there, but what is it? What kind of truth is there? To understand the truth as absolute truth, ultimate truth. Nobody can change. What is life? See, is it Dhamma? Is it Abhidhamma? And what is there in life? Is it Dhamma? Is it Abhidhamma? No doubt about the word we use, not just by way or in the aspect of Abhidhamma and so on, but whatever is real is Abhidhamma or not. It's there, beyond control, no one there at all. That's why we are talking about what is there in truth. So that can be the answer for everything. What is life? See, if someone says it's Abhidhamma, what kind of Abhidhamma is there, which is life? See, so we begin to understand the subtlety of reality, which has to be discussed or learned to understand the truth, which is so very deep, very subtle. And that is Abhidhamma. If it's not subtle, it's not Abhidhamma. But it is so subtle like dukkha right now. It takes time to understand the first Ariya Satya from begin to understand what Dhamma is and the way it is and how it is dukkha in the ultimate truth, not just painful bodily feeling or mental feeling, see? And not just that which is there and then gone, and we cry for it and so on. Dukkha in a day. And the ultimate truth is the arising and falling away of what is there from life to life. If nothing arises at all, is it better not to just arise and fall away each moment, from moment to moment, non-stop, in darkness? See, so very deep, no way out at all if there's no understanding to end up the conditions for whatever is there arising. No more. Is it not dukkha at all when nothing arises? Just learn to understand the truth, to consider it, to have confidence of what we are learning so true any moment. And that is the meaning of Abhidhamma, so deep, so subtle, that it cannot be easily realized until right understanding develop of each word of truth, the reality which arises and experience an object. If there's not that reality at all, can it be life? And so on. Learn to understand life as the ultimate truth, not just the meaning of life, but it's there to be known and understand. The person, the one who realizes the truth, is the very, very wise one, Buddha, and his teaching is out of his understanding and realization. See how deep it is to understand just one word from his realization of the truth. So who can understand it all to the end, from the beginning to the end, just one reality? That's why we learn to understand that what is said is so true. It can be considered. It can be realized when right understanding, more and more letting go, wrong understanding and ignorance. And it's time now. สวัสดีค่ะ